Hello, Denisha, Jaleesa, Mike, Minister Jackson. Hello, Diamond. Cousin Amos. Hey, Big K. All right. As always, we'll give a few more minutes for others to find us. Pastor Linda. All right, we'll get started in just another minute or so. All right, just another minute. Pastor Mike. All righty. All right, we're going to get ready to get started here. Thank you all for joining. For those of you who've been with us before, know that you follow along Minister Jackson. That is Angie Jackson, and she takes incredible notes on our Bible study. And I've been blessed that she's been doing it for a lot of years, and most of the things I teach that are much substance she has recorded. So follow along with Minister Jackson, and you'll be able to see some notes there. Hello, Velma and Jerry. We'll be looking tonight at Exodus, the 14th chapter of Exodus. Exodus 14th chapter, I'll be using the NIV version. So Exodus 14. And tonight's subject will be resilient trust. Resilient trust. All right, so tonight we're going to look at Exodus, the 14th chapter, and we're going to use as a subject resilient trust. All right. And you know the word resilient means. It means it's tough. It hangs in there. It doesn't give up. It doesn't fall apart. It's there. Okay. It takes a beating and it keeps on ticking or something like that. It takes a licking and keeps on ticking or some slogan. So that's what we're going to look at. That resilient trust. You already have faith. All right. And now you want your faith to be in action by trusting what God is doing. And you want to hang in there while you're trusting. You want to be tough with your hanging in there. You want to keep going even when everything says give up. That's called resilient trust. It's that hanging in there trust where you say, man, you know what? Anybody with any really good sense, they just quit and fold over and give up. But you have resilient trust that what God said is going to come to pass. And so since you have resilient trust that what God said is going to come to pass, you want to hang in there until you see it. You get it? All right. So resilient trust is that trust that will let you hang in there until you see what God has promised you come to pass. All right. So resilient trust lets you see what God has promised you come to pass. So let's take a look here at Moses. And I'll be looking again, 14th chapter of Moses. Now, to do this, I'm going to skip about. But I'll cover somewhere between the first verse of Exodus 14 and somewhere around about the 20th verse, about 23rd or 24th verse of Exodus, okay? So I'm going to skip about through that as I go through it and do it, all right? So be aware of that I do know I'm going to skip about with the story. At some point, I'll probably just tell you the story and let you read the rest of the details all your own. So again, tonight, Exodus 14, looking at what type of trust? Resilient trust. That trust that lets you keep going until you see what God has promised you come to pass. Don't miss your blessing by stopping. You got it? Keep going. Trust what God said is on its way. So let's take a look here. And again, we're going to skip about as we read this in the NIV version. Okay, so this is a story where Pharaoh has finally let release Israel from captivity. Didn't want to, but God made him do it. God do the same thing in your life. He'll make the enemy take his hands off of you. All right, 14, verse 1 said, Then the Lord said to Moses, Tell Israel to turn back and encamp about near Pahaharoth, between Migdol and the sea, and encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-Zephon. Pharaoh would think that the Israel was wandering around in the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory, that's the Lord talking, for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So here's what happened. They left Egypt, going out. And as they're traveling, God chose the route for them. That's one thing you have to recognize when you start to walk with the Lord. When you allow the Lord to choose the route, it will work out for your best, even when it doesn't look like it. And so that's what's happened to them. It doesn't look like the route that God has for them is going to work out, because Pharaoh is going to do it from the natural, but he doesn't recognize that God is working from the spiritual. And when God is working for the spiritual, many times he will draw the enemy out behind you. Watch this now. So he can get him out of your life. And the reason he draws him out behind you is because he is actually bringing this enemy out from the enemy's stronghold when he destroys him. Why is that? That's how he actually humiliates the enemy and lets him understand that he's God. So he's going to draw the enemy out, and then he's going to take care of business with him. So don't be afraid when you're walking with the Lord and the enemy follows you. That is what the enemy does. The enemy will follow you out. So stop being shocked when the enemy follows you out. Similarly, let me just use an example. You ladies, you married a good-looking man. You have a good-looking husband. He looks good. He smells good. He dressed good. How do you know? You the one dressed him. He looks good, smells good. He goes to work, and you worry about a woman going to say something to him. Of course she's going to say something to him. He's a good-looking man. That's what women do, okay? But don't worry about it. If you have resilient trust that God really has his hand on him and that he has a hand on you before you lay hands on him, then everything's going to be okay. You get it? Enemies will come after things. That's just how it works. So stop being saying something, that they better not say anything to my man. Listen, people's going to say something to your husband, okay? You get it? So don't worry about it as long as you have resilient trust that God's going to work it out. Now, by the way, women, just as a note, you'll also know that your husband has resilient trust. Here's how you want to know. If you ask him at the end of the day, did you see Susie? And he say, I didn't see her. Yes, he did. He saw her. Okay, I'm sorry. I just sneaked that in there. Okay, he can't tell you he saw her, but he's afraid of it. Okay, you get it? But my point here is, don't be afraid when things come after you or come after the things you love. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Well, you have to recognize, if they are with God and you're with God, God's going to draw the enemy out, and he's going to drop the enemy. Okay, he's going to body slam them. All right, you get it? Before you have to. All right. Now, when the king of Egypt heard this, he came after him. So let's drop down here to about verse 10. So now Pharaoh's coming after him. Verse 10. As Pharaoh approached the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them, and they were terrified and cried out to the Lord. Listen, if you see the enemy come after you, it ought to scare you. That happens. That's natural. Okay? Someone said, God did not give me the spirit of fear. Yeah, but those enemies behind me, they got me shaking in my boots. You get it? That is natural for you to be afraid when the enemy's coming after you. Okay? All right? So they said to Moses, you could have just left us in Egypt if we were going to die here. And they start grumbling against Moses. Said, didn't we tell you to leave us alone? Here's something you want to understand. Not everybody with you is walking with resilient trust in God. I'll say that again. Not everybody with you is walking with resilient trust in God. When that happens, be prepared for them to grumble when you're doing something in the spirit that doesn't look like it's going to work out. People who operate solely in the natural side will never be able to operate fully in the spiritual side with resilient trust. Get it? And that's what's happening. Moses had resilient trust. And as later on, you're going to discover that he's going to transfer his spirit of trust to them. You get it? So don't get so bent out of shape when everybody doesn't get it. It'll happen. You hang on your resilient trust, and you walk forward with God. All right. So Moses answered the people, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need to only be still. Okay? You need to hold your peace. I think that's what it says in King James Version. When you have resilient trust, you speak with a calm voice, even in the face of defeat. When you have resilient trust, you speak with a calm voice, even in the face of defeat. People with resilient trust don't let the panic mode of others become their panic mode. They trust that one way or other, God is going to work it out. Okay? People with resilient trust, an accident's about to happen, they're calm because they believe one way or another, God has to work something out. Parents with resilient trust will see their children in situations that aren't healthy and aren't good for them, but they'll hold on to the end, believing that resilient trust in God will eventually bring them out. That's what's happening here. So I speak that to you tonight, to hold on and trust that whatever you're going through, God is going to bring it out. Because you see, resilient trust, okay, is that trust that when all life around you is falling apart, it looked like you're not going to be able to make your journey, you keep moving anyway forward towards your destiny. All right? Looks like life is just falling apart all around you. And look like it's going to stop your journey towards your destiny and it start to interfere with it. You keep going and moving forward anyway. That's what resilient trust will do for you. All right? So Moses told him to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, as King James quotes it. Verse 15. Let's see. So the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying to me? Tell Israelite to move forward. Raise your staff and stretch out over the sea and divide the water so the Israelites can go through on dry land. God is asking Moses, why are you coming to me with this when you have resilient trust? The others just don't. But if you act, you'll give them a seed of hope that will help them to understand how they too can trust God and get through. A good parent will never lose sight of resilient trust, okay? Because it inspires hope in their children. People in the community never lose sight of resilient trust in God because it inspires hope in the situation. And that's what Moses is doing. And that's what God is reminding God. So people with resilient trust many times need to be reminded by God. Oftentimes people with resilient trust need to be reminded by God. He said, I've already given you what it takes to do it. And that's what God is saying to many of you. He's saying, I've already given you what it takes to do it. Now you got to trust that you have it and that you have what it takes. Hashtag, I have what it takes. Hashtag it, I have what it takes. And I want you to believe that. I want you to get up tomorrow when you get ready to face the obstacles tomorrow. I want you to say, I have what it takes. I don't care what your body of sickness is saying. I don't care what your finance is saying. I don't care what your career is saying. I don't care what your goals look like. I want you to get up and say, ooh, somebody did it, okay? I have what it takes. And that's what God is telling Moses, inspire the people with, to let them know that they already have what it takes. So here's what happened. So, all right, so let's drop down to verse 21. Then Moses stretched out his hands over the sea, and all night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided. Here's what's going to happen. God is going to take as long as it takes to prepare your pathway. God is going to take as long as it takes to prepare your pathway. You see, when God prepared this pathway for them, it wasn't for God. God is okay. But it takes time to prepare a pathway for us to operate in the natural state. For them to walk through it, it took time. The trouble you're experiencing now didn't come overnight. It took years to build it. And it's going to take time to turn it around. You get it? For God to prepare a pathway through your trouble. Some of you may be with marriages, you've been arguing with your husband and look like you can't carry a civil conversation over and over again. That didn't come this week, didn't come last week. That came over time. But if you act with resilient trust, you'll say, Lord, open a clear pathway. Hashtag it. Lord, open a clear pathway. Okay? That's what he's doing. And he's opening, and it takes time. So he used the miracle. He drove back the winds so they could go across on dry land. And Israel went through, and Israel went through, and Israel went through. That's the key thing. You are going through too. You are going to make it. You are going through. All right? All right? Because you see, resilient trust says that I will never stop trusting God until God gets me through it. Resilient trust says I will never stop trusting God until God gets me through it. Whatever your it is. Their it was the Red Sea. Your it could be that job. Your it could be those grades. Your it could be that test. Your it could be that relationship. All right? Or that like of a relationship, or a broken down relationship, or the wrong relationship. Whatever your it is, you've got to have resilient trust that says, I am never going to stop trusting God until God gets me through it. That's where Moses was. He refused to stop trusting God. And in doing so, he's bringing deliverance to those around him. Here's the point. Those with resilient trust don't mind others riding the coattail. I would say that again. Those with resilient trust don't mind others riding the coattail. If you're crying about others who are being blessed because you're blessed, stop crying. Get over it. That's how life is. You get blessed, others around you will get blessed too. Okay? As soon as you fill up your car with gas, somebody's going to need a ride. Okay, you get it? All right? As soon as you get that raise, all right, someone's going to need a loan. Whatever it is, something's going to happen. But those resilient trust knows God is the one that opened the pathway. And if God opened that pathway, he can open another. God can open another pathway, people. And that's what he's doing. All right? And because Moses has resilient trust, he can see it. You will see it too when you have resilient trust to keep moving forward with God. So, open the pathway Israel went through on, 22, verse 22. And the Israelites went through the sea on dry land with a wall of water on the right and on the left. So there's a wall of trouble all around them. Don't worry about the trouble being around you. Okay? That's just it. God's just letting you see what you've been delivered from and the things that aren't going to harm you anymore. Okay? Listen, if you've been healed, go to the doctor and get your healing report. Okay? That way you will discover the things that were around you. You get it? Don't worry about the things around you. Know that God is taking you through your trouble. You see, those with resilient trust, they have a little bit of tunnel vision when they're walking through trouble. They know the trouble's there. But the tunnel vision keeps them focused on the goal, focused on the destiny, focused on the target. And they refuse to back away from seeing that target in front of them. They don't waste all day on Facebook talking about people who don't like them. Because tomorrow there will be another group of people on there who don't like you. Stop wasting your time. See your goal and speak the things that God is doing in your life, not the things that other people are doing to you. Just thought I'd give you that one. Okay, you get the point. Moses wasn't concerned about the trouble on the side of him. He knew where he was going. And because he knew where he was going, he was able to take some others with him. You can take others with you too if you tunnel vision your focus with resilient trust. All right? All right, so there it is. They're walking through on dry land. And let's see what happens. Verse 23, and we'll stop there with our reading. The Egyptians pursued them with Pharaoh and all his horses, and during the night they came. And then when in verse 26, while Pharaoh's in the midst of the storm, he thinks he's going to get the same blessing God's children are going to get. Not so, not so. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the waters flowed back, and the Egyptians drowned it. And there you have it. Here's a key thing. Those with resilient trust don't stop doing what God has called them to do till God finish using them to do it. And I know I said it just like that. Those with resilient trust don't stop doing what God has called them to do until God has finished using them to do it. If God is using you to care for elderly people, you're going to find a new elderly person every other week. As soon as you finish with one, it's going to be another one. Get over it. He's using you for that ministry. If you're the type of person who has a heart to care for children, it's going to keep following you around because God is going to continue to use you. If you have a gift for teaching, you're going to keep teaching because God is using you. And yes, God will use you in the earth to take care of those things around you, his plants, his animals, and things of that nature. And yes, for those who care about insects and bugs, God will use you for that as well. And he will allow you to be a voice, okay, for nature and for those types of things. But he won't stop using you until he's finished using you to get it done. That's what he's doing with Moses, because Moses had resilient trust. So you wonder why does God keep using you? Let me tell you why. That's a sign that you have resilient trust. Those with resilient trust tend to get used. And then when they're finished getting used, guess what? They get used again. I didn't say misuse, although that can happen, but that is part of your calling because you have resilient trust. All right. So what resilient trust does is resilient trust says that life might be stalling on you, but it won't stop. Resilient trust says life might be in a stall, but it won't stop because you have resilient trust. Resilient trust tells you to keep going no matter what. All right. Because you see, resilient trust gives you the courage, all right, to move towards your delivered position. Say that again. Resilient trust gives you the courage to move towards your delivered position. In other words, you're not looking just to be being delivered. You want to reach the point where it's ED, it's happened. And that's what happened to Israel. When they first walked out of Egypt, they thought it was all over, but no, the enemy's after them. Same thing you thought. You got married, but no, the enemy's after you. You got a job, no, but the enemy's after you. You have a career, but no, the enemy's after you. Until you deliver, you got to hang on to your resilient trust until the job is finished. All right, you got it? Tell somebody on there, hang on till it's done. Hang on till it's done. If you're believing for your healing, you hang on till you get your healing. If you're believing for deliverance, you hang on until you get your deliverance. You get it? Whatever it is. And I want you to believe for something tonight, and I want you to hang on till it's done. All right. So with that, let me give you my definition, Reverend's definition of resilient trust. Many of you know I like to write my own definitions. And by the way, this is all taught from the Christian perspective. Is that not your view? And you're now in the middle of this video. Now would be a good time to just leave it because we teach here what we believe to be an authentic word from the Lord. All right, definition. Ready? Here we go. Definition of resilient trust. Resilient trust is trust that allows God to prove himself to be watchful over your journey through the wilderness of life so that you can reach your promised destination. I'll say that again. Resilient trust is trust that allows God to prove himself to be watchful over your journey. God is watching over your journey, and you need to believe that he is watching over your journey. Hashtag it, God's watching over my journey. Resilient trust is trust that allows God to prove himself to be watchful over your journey through the wilderness of life And we know this is a tough life many times to get through. It was tough for our parents and parents before then, and the next generation will be tough for them too. That's just how life is. We all view it as the toughest time, okay? Through the wilderness of life, so that you can reach your promised destination. In other words, God's going to watch you until you get to where you have to get to. You need to know where you're going. They were going to what's called the promised land. There is a promised destination for you too, and God is going to watch over you till you get there, as long as you hold on to resilient trust. Just be crazy enough to keep going. Don't stop no matter what. You hang in there. And listen, people are going to talk about you, okay, along the way. One of the things that happens with people with resilient trust, it's embarrassing. Because sometimes there are going to be some embarrassing situations in your life that people are going to laugh at you and talk about you, talk about your family, and talk about things you're going through and be ha, 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 ha. See, that God must not be with them because this happened. Ha, ha, ha. God must not be with them because this happened. You hang on there and you refuse. You turn a deaf ear, you turn tunnel vision to all the people asking you, what happened? That's what's going on with you. I thought God was with you. Turn a deaf ear. Don't pay them any attention. Don't give them any explanation. Don't waste your best breath talking about it. No space on Facebook, no data on your text message. Just leave it be. Those with resilient trust believe that God is taking them on the journey, and they're not going to listen to what everyone else is saying about it. They're going to keep going because they know one day God's going to turn it around. I believe tonight God's turning something around in your life. So that's our definition. In the last few minutes, let me give you 4 features that we find in those with resilient trust and around when there's a situation where resilient trust is needed or operating. You ready? Here we go. 4 features. Number 1, know that God said you can do it. You can go. I'm sorry. Yeah. Know that God said you can go. Whatever your goal is. And go can be you can do, you can have, you can possess. So know that God said you can go, said you can be, know that God said you can do it, know that God said you can have it, know that God said you can possess it. So you need to believe in the promises of God and know what God said about them. And if God said you can have it, or you can go, or you can be, then it's yours. So number 1 is know that God said you can go. Okay? The second one. Watch this. It's very important. Don't miss the concept of this. And I won't be able to teach it all tonight, but I'll give it to you. Use your point of contact with God to open the way, to open your way, open the way. Use your point of contact with God to open the way. Moses' point of contact with God was his I think I just lost it. Are you still there? I apologize. I thought my screen was shutting down on me. All right, I apologize. Someone let me know I'm still here. Okay. Number 1 was know what God said. I'm having technical problems. Number 2, use your point of contact with God to open the way. All right. Moses had a point of contact. His was his staff. That's what reminded him that God was in his life. You have something in your life that's going to remind you that God is in your life. Hang on to it and don't you lose sight of it. Know that God, your point of contact, your prayer power, your praise, your worship, your reading, your devotional time. Hold on. That is your point of contact with God. Use it. Use your gifting. All right. Number 3, step between the walls of what's blocking your path. Step between the walls of what's blocking your path. In other words, stop trying to fight in and out of them. Just step through it. If you're dealing with people who are talking about you, stop talking back to them. Step past them, folks. You get it? If you're having a challenging time in one area, step through that area, move to the next area. You get it? You've got to recognize that God has opened a path, and you need to step into that path. Okay? to avoid things that are blocking you. That's number 3. And number 4, trust God to cover both sides of your pathway. Trust God to cover both sides of your pathway. And in fact, cover your front and your rear. So expect God to cover both sides of your pathway. Wherever your pathway is, believe that God's going to be in front of you, behind you, your right, your left. He's going to cover it. So there you have your four principles. Know that God said go. Use your point of contact. Step between the walls of trouble, whatever's blocking your path, and trust God to cover you as you go along your path. All right? So there you have it. Resilient trust. That's trust that keeps you going in your faith. So when your life seems stalled by the operations of life, point your faith in the direction you must go, and your resilient trust will walk you to safe deliverance. God's outlook for you is as an overcomer. Resilient trust will let you be one. This is Dr. Anthony Revis, Faith Ministries Church, Midland, Michigan, USA. God bless.